Hi, I'm Stephen Newton, and in this video I'm going to talk about some of the factors that you should take into consideration when you're going to buy a fly rod, particularly if you're new to fly fishing, you're a beginner, not quite sure what you need. And my aim here is to help you to avoid some of the errors that I've made in buying fly rods over the last 60 odd years. So the first fly rod I ever bought was 10 feet long. It was made of green heart. I bought it at a church jumble sale in 1963, and I very quickly learned that it was completely the wrong kind of rod for the very small moorland streams that I was fishing at that time as a young boy. So the first consideration when you're buying a fly rod is where you intend to use it for the most part. Now, if you're a beginner, if you're just starting out in fly fishing, you may simply not know. You may want a rod that will allow you to do pretty much something of anything. And if that is the case, then the conventional wisdom for many, many years has been that the go-to weapon of choice for fly fishermen is a 9 foot 5 weight. It will do something of everything, won't necessarily excel at everything, but it's a good general all-rounder. And if you want to extend that further, then think about the possibility of a manufacturer's outfit. So the fly rod, the reel, the line, all put together as a single package by a manufacturer who in many cases will offer you a good deal for buying the package as one. And they'll charge you less for buying the package than they would do for all the items bought individually. So a 9 foot 5 weight fly rod is a great go-to for most things. I'm going to talk a little bit in future videos about things like line rating, action and so forth. But I think let's just stick with the theme for the moment of the primary use of your fly rod. Where you're going to use it, small stream, river, lake, saltwater, is only part of the story. The other part of it is a combination of how big are the flies that you intend to cast, and to a lesser extent, what species of fish you're after. So the vast majority of my fishing is on southern English chalk streams. I'm fishing for trout and grayling. There may be other fish that come along as a kind of bycatch, chub, dace, perch occasionally. And none of these fish is going to be terribly large. So I'm going to be using typically smaller flies, probably size 14 or less. So with that in mind, my choice will be either a 7 or 7.5 foot fly rod for small streams with overhanging trees, because that's going to be a lot more convenient to use. Where I'm fishing a larger river with open banks, an 8.5 or 9 foot fly rod, again probably a 4 weight, might be a 5, will do very well for many situations. And if I'm going to be nymphing primarily, then I will very often go for a 10 foot fly rod, again probably a 4 weight. For lakes and still waters, I will probably go for a longer rod, 9.5 or 10 feet, and heavier, so a 6 or 7 weight. And those 6 and 7 weight rods with a longer length will actually allow me to cast larger flies greater distances. Essentially, those are the sort of broad guidelines. 7.5 feet for fairly tightly tree-laden smaller streams, 8.5, 9 foot for rivers with open banks, 10 feet for nymphing, 9.5 or 10 feet where I'm fishing still waters, and the line rating very much driven by the size of flies that I'm going to be casting. Now, I think the other factor to consider first out is, as a rule of thumb, buy the best, not just that you can afford, but that you want to afford. Buy the best you want to afford, because actually a better specified rod, a better quality blank, better quality fittings, will probably be more enjoyable for you to use. But that leads me on to the connected point, which is whenever you're buying a rod, buy something that really feels good. It kind of speaks to you. And if, as I suggest, you go into a well-stocked fly shop to try a number of rods before you make a buying decision, you will actually come across something that will just feel different. It'll feel better to you in your hands than other rods that you've tried. Try rods that are within your budget range, and try a couple of rods that are more costly, higher end. Try one or two rods if you can that are less expensive, because nowadays some of these low cost rods can be surprisingly capable, particularly when you take into account their cost. So don't be seduced by price, just pick the best that you want to afford, and if you find something that is cheaper but just feels better for you, then that's a good reason to buy such a rod. So think about the primary use of your rod, the location where you're going to be using it, the kind of fish that you're likely to be chasing, and the the affordability factor as well. And then in future videos, I'm going to talk more about length, line rating, and action, which are getting into the kind of technical specifications of a rod. But at least if you've got an idea of where you're going to use the rod, and therefore how long it will be, and the kind of line rating you think you might need, that'll give you a good starting point to do some research. Hope that's been useful. See you in the next video.